Oh, this video is regarding WFSB has rape threats. New Britain Superior Court has roles with WFSB with predicate acts. New Britain Superior Court's Facebook page has rape threats that were recorded, used as other means of other natures of predicate acts roles and child abuse roles with a proven principal child abuser that was effectively used to hide that, enforce that. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, was increasingly involved with that school and with the kids of the principals of that school and other campuses involved. Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, is increasingly involved with names next to campuses in Wethersfield and in Hartford, for example, as roles with names and in New Britain. They have names next to campuses hiding live progressions where fake things are being stacked in databases and the motivations come from off those locations. Where and how the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and nature are blamed on other things, others ourselves, as the breaching method propagated alter roles, self-cultivated roles too. Otherwise, that person would be sensed, or that body, even if it was a majority. This breaching method that came from some ancient times before modern religions were even born. Their leaders. Already, the sciences have become criminally foreign influenced. Already, they have become sciences tactical terror from that which is hyper native pure, and no one had free speech while they had to pretend other. Again, or they were sensed through their own. As the human species body of individual bodies, volume sciences is individual / group different / S. And as the human species body, volume science / S. Unabridged. As the Constitution was supposed to be gotten unabridged. This breaching method interpreted what our founders communicated to us before we did. It had already sustained complete, better than perfect possession / hyperpossession over the locations, areas, and states of everywhere the species body is. And had sustained that before our founders' parents were born, not just in America. So you'll notice how the suburbs were designed before our founding parents were born. The size, the scale, the infrastructure, and the design of it. Designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and nature. This breaching method knew that nature would continually demonstrate itself to us. But it had already employed other things, others, ourselves blamed for the negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures it caused. Acts like predicate acts, natures like wrongdoers, like wrongdoing itself, natures like criminal enterprises themselves, predicate acts themselves, predicate acts methods themselves, a criminal insidiousness delivery system method, delivered collusions with criminal insidious natures of positive treatments and or negative treatments and or exceptions as collusions. So we have people that say, oh, A, therefore B, but they leave out and can't afford discerned exceptions. We have the nature of debate originally, and still there was a complete possession / hyperpossession over it that our founders asked us to address honestly. George Washington asked us to address honestly his extortion, which that comes with the tortures of him. And honest addressment of that comes with the tortures of crazy laws and or as criminal insidious natures and or the difference between the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones we know were existing. We know that the foundation of it, there was never equality. They couldn't get away with debating equality now. They are shown this. They interpret the law, the quote experts on everything. See, forgiveness is not to blame this. So it's this company, it's that, it's the industrial complex, this, it's that. It's criminal insidiousness itself. It's the quality aspects and nature of fact, nature, quality, how they know they have to hide it too. There are experts at logic with our campuses of all ages and natures that have a certain type of victim / hyper victim. As every modern country, everywhere the species body stands, how other things, others themselves, blamed for what a breaching method was communicated by our founders to blame. Our founders communicated for us to understand and communicate the difference between communication, what is communicated and what is said, and to understand the relativity of that, wherein how the laws were designed for everyone to measure and maintain collusions with what can't be colluded with, and the value of the Constitution unabridged, to reveal its hyper additional value / S, which is what it is, why it is unabridged. In other words, this ancient republic, America, there was damage control done. All truths about the freedom of it. It's still that when they bring up Jim Crow laws, a breaching method effectively measures and maintains self-cultivated roles with the logic of the people speaking about the not and valuing knowledge of good and evil. People who know the most about the Quran, for example, and or the most about the Old Testament, they're still roles getting over on what it says in the beginning of those books, preventing the value of that from servicing. And this is relative where value is nature / nature as value, and the opposite sequence / simultaneous nature as a hyper simultaneous nature, as what is discernible using science, as that which reveals humanity with two eyes, other species bodies with two eyes, and with exception nature. We have the same eyes. We have distinct, non-distinct, simultaneously non-distinct, and simultaneous eyes. The same way the other species bodies do simultaneously. But per a third hyper-simultaneous, third distinct, non-distinct, and also simultaneous, but also hyper-simultaneous identity of sequence nature. We know that the other species bodies did not reveal themselves. All these, even the bugs. Did you ever try sneaking up on a fly or a moth that gets in your house? They're conscious of us. They know, even a spider. There was a spider on the ceiling. The second I moved to go for him, he knew I was coming for him. And so you guys use these animals, look at humanity, and or the suits and ties, counters, and exceptions as collusion. And with the suburbs having been tactically denatured to cause negative value, nature, progressions, action, nature, is effectively this breaching method employed before employment is known. The deepest part of and motivation for those crazy slavery laws. Oh, it's money, this, that. No. There are proofs. This is the most probable and is increasingly more practical and is increasingly demonstrable. But that it is most probable that a hyper-archetypal human fact-keeping nature, predicate acts / criminal insidiousness delivery system method singular had been developed in semi-ancient times. Not just as the proverbial devil, and shaitan. I don't know how to pronounce it properly in Arabic. And I believe I learned through the nature of, in other words, we were supposed to not name it one name. And the only thing I know about the devil is through the nature of religion, because the science of it, everyone prevents what is said right up front and where it's about science from being discerned. The people who have the most knowledge of good and evil have used that and while being shown. Because the religious books are about law. The religious books are about nature, which is simultaneously greater than and more finite than the environment, while it has its active value in ways that it could not be. While there is this possession / hyperpossession over us, we could ignore, we could be systems other than its own hypernative, but it will demonstrate lethal IDs, force-based nature transfer, and nature being that part of our identity that we could only discern because of the way we are a semi-nature relationship to it. Just like a little cell or part of your body is a semi-nature relationship to your body, hyper additionally to it. Everything is hyper additional to itself, where it is value as nature / nature as value. And the opposite sequence / simultaneous nature. Nature is value / nature as, nature is value / value as nature. Now, this is algebraic consciousness, which is more probably what the ancients called this, and more practically, because the descriptions of the histories of the languages of the sciences, they left out the collusions at those points in history with criminally foreign influenced uses of databases, where and how before that became and was, and all it caused, all that had to hide right back to and as all locations, voicings of voices, sense and sensibilities, to use Jane Austen's phrase, that could not defend themselves and afford our defense through the short words of any other body. They could not afford to have listed truths used where truths are capable of being used, where they come inherently with the revelation and or means to discern either someone else doing it or knowingly or unknowingly, or someone else valuing their descriptions of truth, where truths can be used for lies. Nature shows us the difference, the critical difference of understanding the difference between positives that are criminal insidiousness natures of positives or not. Even if the whole world agrees to be a unity that agrees to stay abridged from what's positive, also lasting ways to its system. See, its system uses a special difference and uses the increasing value of equality and nature of debate that has not been known. Because in our faces, a breaching method measures and maintains, for example, other communicated for our founders than they communicated for us to communicate for themselves. For example, our founders communicated for us to understand why and how they had to counter-extort their founders. They communicated for us to understand how the only means for them to do that was based on the fact where those laws were so crazy against everyone, and they had already been sustained against everyone, where it was already manifest in everyone's syntax nature, with everything spoken or not, and every name used. Tactical ulterior from how our names were employed by the hyper-native pure. See native dreams. See, literally, this is a science to the Navajo. See the Navajo about dreams and about voice and about nature. See, America fell. Native Americans are our founders too, individually grouped and together. They are semi our founders, with the founders who had to counter extort the other founders, and with those founders. And only because of that was anybody ever, was there damage control, where even the positive treatments, we're rebelling against the system, but just to put it in another system that's different and keep paint it over, excuse me, and or blamed on other things, others, ourselves. The real worst causes of negative value nature progressions, acts and natures, acts like predicate acts, natures like criminal and citizens natures, wrongdoers. I am not a lawyer. This is some case law. Lawyers not immune from prosecution. This is United States of America plaintiff appellate cross appellate versus Jerry B. Craig defendant appellate cross appellate. NOS 95-3734 95-3771. United States Court of Appeals, 6th Circuit. Argued June 3rd, 1996. Decided November 8th, 1996. But for under the conspiracy 23.1 part, lawyers are not held to a different standard from non-lawyers when their participation in a conspiracy is evaluated. 18 U.S.C.A. 371. Trantolo and Trantolo have roles: recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, with forcing a principal child abuser, as in the form of making conspiracy theories, pretending others made conspiracy theories, and how against the government. And as roles with WFSB, forcing, changing what people say and making things up, also with the police forms and courts involved with them. At News, WFSB has roles with them. Also further on Twitter with more FBI, with the principal child abusers campus and other campuses, and that one through time with other. There's a Kevin Harris, who reportedly was a boyfriend of a daughter of a principal when I went there, and he's involved with identity thefts and frauds against me, slanders against me, and planting evidences with judges and prosecutors, also on and off campuses, intercities through time, planting sequences, and then as roles with the World Trade Center attack, and with our military, foreign and domestic, KKK themed, black themed, Confederate flag themed. At the same time, collusions with Koreans, people from Italy, with the psychiatry tied to courts and prisons, and their state offices, state judicial branch offices, houses next to them, next to the state corrections offices, timed roles with a whole bunch of different countries, people from Korea, people from Afghanistan, etc. Criminally foreign influence uses of cultural differences as assigned by the breaching method. Black pupils. How come we never had black pupils, whites, and advised? As what is communicated by nature, everyone pretends passions, emotions for science, for success. Well, when did success come? They're shown needs to pretend they can speak for the law, and they tell them, okay, now explain what Jim Crow laws are about. You can't explain the law what Jim Crow laws are about until you understand the difference between criminal foreign influences and hyper criminal foreign influences, because it was a singular breaching method that is the foundation to the suits and ties nations and to the counters to them, and the exceptions, like when they open their mouths making convictions regarding net uses of names, like America, like the other countries involved, like the isms they use when they're doing it with logic. See, they came through campuses that had overtly slash simultaneously insidiously other things, others, or selves, forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to be blamed for things like slavery, for things like Jim Crow, because you guys left out the breaching method, and it stayed entrenched. Our founders communicated for us to understand about how it was entrenched north and south. A slavery slash hyper slavery method against everyone and against themselves, but they told us to begin with honest treatments of the extortion of George Washington and of Marbury versus Madison. Madison's James Madison, also the fourth president. See, president slash chief. And that's a manifest title given by nature itself, because everything's hypernative. Indigenous populations are manifested the way they are because of breaching method assigned all natural difference slash S, physical, metaphysical, and identities, volume science slash S. Tactical terror, logic experts, tactically delusions raw. Statistic roles and natures and needs. Already stacked fake things in databases. Roles with it too. How the difference between that too, you employ it. This method uses self-valued roles with uses of difference, tactical terror from how nature uses it, which is why and how we have the same color eyes while we have different color eyes simultaneously. Because nature uses functional. How one of the things that's hyper invisible, but still discernible as. It is one singular identity of possession slash S over all parts of English grammar. It is why there are 5 names for the verb. It is why there is the appearance of an exception, being a 6th name, being an infinitive, but that's really exception nature. That appear that way only because of how it's constantly showing us nature, also how it uses exception nature in ways that we could not invent or make up. Because the phenomena, how it is a perfectly increasing identity of value. As the only identity of volume, that makes its own value slash value progressions. And it's doing this through temporary slash lasting space nature, which is the value of identity to an extent we can discern, the same way as the verb needing to have 5 names. The same way as the subject needing to be assigned a name. See, it answers all our questions because it is inseparable from the smallest finite thing, 1/3/5 finite ways. More finite than the smallest detail and greater than it. Well, as its value. One identity of hyper-simultaneous nature is coming to, from, as, with, and for itself, not only as the identity of relativity, but as the identity of relativity slash hyper-relativity. You always hear the same things repeated by people who give advice to others. Oh, forget the past. Oh, forget about the future. Oh, well, I'm saying this because and forget people's descriptions of emotions. They're leaving out the natural function, which is only to discern if we're using systems tactically ulterior than the hypernative one. If someone describes their own emotions or other people's only to leave out or make up or value that finite details, group details, or simultaneous values, relativity, or the value of what came first. See, this is a method that has perfected hyper criminal insidiousness here. The only identity of sophistication any overt criminal enterprise or private one ever had. That includes the branch of the government as criminal insidiousness nature, because that's what nature shows us. They were while there were Jim Crow laws, let alone before our founders put their foot down to do damage control. And don't forget that the Native Americans are our founders. And don't forget that in our faces, both the Native Americans' identity and the founders, as George Washington and James Madison, are still in our faces. And the religious leaders, what they said in their books. And the people are using the knowledge of good and evil, and they're getting away with it because of uses of locations with them self-value to bridge grounding, fake cross references, methods, and tricks with all the fake things, faked integrity, formally lied. That stays collusion with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. Hundreds of countries individually grouped it together. All voicings of humanity as systems tactical ulterior. For the one, again, that is hyper native pure, unabridged. So you don't even have American history. No, but to understand American history, you have to understand the criminal insidiousness delivery system method, the predicate acts with facts method, sustained against everyone. And then it's spilling on, it's completing it. When it comes to American history, with the Native Americans and our founders, had to fight with the other founders. Not the Native Americans, that too. Native Americans had to fight with Native Americans. They are our founders too. And the difference of that is still obfuscated and worse. And the difference of that is also used differentially worse. Differentially because there are foreign bodies here and there that are maintenance to getting away with the kind types of A, therefore B, bullying logic used by the identities only allowed to be heard, voicing things at all natures of communications, at all locations /S. This method used us remotely from other nations while having used them remotely, effectively before computers, before they had planes and everything, because they tactically denatured the suburbs. They tactically denatured the native. Means to, there's a hyper-forensic trail of Native Americans being hurt and or helped to make them, for reasons I don't even realize, because they need to have the syntax, not allowing any individual, where every individual is actually capable of discerning through correlation nature, which, for example, is a breaching method, singular, where and how manifests all kinds of ways. It has conscious roles with all the known uses of immaturity that's pretending mature and maturity that's pretending others are immature. While the difference of that too is fake regarding cultural differences. Culture is about the hyper native pure. Culture is about why we are individual group different /S. The little birds have male, female sex, species body. We have systems tactical ulterior. They want to have debates. They have repeated. They have the news companies. Then they tell them to pretend it's personal because they have wire crime methods with the phones too. And they get away with it because they have the intelligence community at the locations next to the news locations. They have where they went their campuses, all campuses before they were All locations /S were used criminally foreign influence. Specifically so, wherever the campuses would be manifest, voicings with the identity of the sciences. This preaching method knew that they would have to value at those locations and at the ones conjunctive with the value of their convictions and of their syntax, used as evidences where they use the knowledge of good and evil, and wherein how there's a complete possession / hyperpossession over the nature of the debate, over all communication locations, let alone that furthering it. See, that increasingly has to value this having been vaccines. So you just can't call people up because they'll just fabricate audio and video. Weathersfield police have roles with state police through time and with the FBI and with other agencies with their wire crime action methods. They also stick fake conversations with kids in their databases. Now, years later, too, they're still pretending I have conversations with people because I have live aggression. Pretend there's kids in your same class because you're the same age. They call that a class. These kids you never see around campuses. They have them involved with other pretended into databases. They're fabricating audio and video. It's not just that the principal was with upskirt pictures and digital abuses of kids. There are more than still to there and now, with Twitter involved, and more natures of organized crime involved with the natures at his campus, and the names next to it, and their doctors involved too. There are roles with fire departments and all ages and natures of campuses. Many people don't realize that hospitals are campuses, fire departments are campuses. Even private campuses and public campuses. They're doing little tricks onto the thing. So when people investigations relative to where and to how, one of the things where Jim Crow law is about, let alone the other, the former, it's about criminally foreign remote uses of criminally foreign influence of all investigations, of all investigators, of all campuses, of all thought, of all reason. See, nature's identity and the extent we have a means by correlation to use difference by its means, greater than and more finite than maths, greater than and more finite than how they perceive, and discuss evidence and subjects, exception, difference, and a special difference. Know how what's a special shows how something is different, and or not. Relative, while simultaneously the value of why we have the same colorized and / different colorized at the same time, or not, is manifest in the opposite sequence nature. We could trace the relativity of this on paper. We could program it. This is how programming / hyperprogramming works. All stupid jerks. So the same way they could train, okay, this is the law. You teach them, you got all the teachers of the different schools. You'll teach the students that they're going to build sprites, and then there'll be collisions, and there's a physics engine. And you guys left out how and why the ground works. You guys left out the electrical engineering of consciousness, of correlation nature, this human volume science, as it is actually manifest. Did science speak honestly for New York City? Many have tried from suburbs. It's one of the easiest ways right then when you hear the black-white thing. leaving out how we have black pupils, whites of eyes. There are so many ways we could discern. The knowledge, experts on knowledge of good and evil. Before we have those contexts, we also know those contexts are criminally foreign influence. Now we know different ways because all identities of jobs, of positives, have state collusions, where and how there is that hyper identity theft of everyone's system by that one that measures it and maintains it. Left out, nature demonstrating that, but other things, others, ourselves, blamed for those demonstrations. This thing had tactically denatured the feet, the ground below the feet of the Native Americans before our founders were born. Had tactically already sustained more and more effective, measured, and maintained. Obviously, they could not defend their education. And when they could, the difference of that too, effectively employed by the thing, the breaching method, the hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise, if you will. Worse than war crimes and the needs to discern them, per the logic, conviction, simultaneous delusions regarding our experts when they make opinions regarding war. They leave out revolution. What the nature of debate, all they do is say whatever and pretend whatever to get things going before courts that are already collusions. Effectively, originally, and is still doing it. It gets names on all sides of criminal and civil cases. The victims, the court's appointed advocates, names of the hallways of the courts, their sources, the news at the same time, names in the branch, sticking sequence shifts, fake things in databases, and worse, as collusions. Also, how would everyone's family members, neighbors, or whatever, everyone next to each other? It's a little method that the breaching method shows. The former director of FBI, for example, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act, as one of the ones on and off the World Trade Center. Think about that trade, world trade. When did they have the integrity to speak for trade? How long did they have weapons and the means to traverse the earth? And we're in the suburbs, tactically denatured, and they're pretending that's debatable. Let them do so over here because they can't get on paper legitimately. These are people that post-dated legal documents from inside the Ninth Circuit Court right next to the World Trade Center towers as people involved with criminal and civil cases, both sides of it, the lawyers, the court's names, their sources, the police forms, their sources, their family members. Even Saudis, they forced before the World Trade Center attack collusions with them. A whole bunch of people tied to Mr. Abruzzi who were involved with child abuses at kids at campuses I went to. And with identity thefts and frauds and slanders with the principal child abusers campus and other child abusers leaders. Also per remote abuses of their kids specifically for such. So in other words, forgiveness is so you guys allow people to use short words. Get them onto paper, into branch. They're switching names, forging names. With the people from Central Connecticut State University and the crime scenes involved. They pretend to have roles with crime scenes, body dumping spots too. With the same instances too, they brought up all these things. They also use crime methods of pretending people say everyone else is evil. Because there are a whole bunch of names tied to databases who are fakes together with a whole bunch of other countries at the same time when they have integrity. So they're faking conversations with people. That's how they get away with that. And then they also stack people's names at the same time because they have roles with criminally foreign influence readings of statutes. CNN semi-confess this. These are foreign and domestic. I believe his name is Larry Johnson. That is one of the guys that are judged Napolitano with Judging Freedom, the Judging Freedom YouTube channel. He recently had a guest named Larry Johnson, I believe, who is the one who noted. What was it? I wish I had a rewind button. One time, I believe it was the Washington Post or it was the New York Times. And they asked him what happened with something. He told them it was wrong. And so they reported it and did honest. They corrected themselves and reported, okay, we told the wrong thing. And they have rules with foreign media. And they thought other people would do it too, but they won't. Because there is a nature of uses of the abridged sciences that need to pretend their integrity. Certain type of victim / hyper victim. Forgiveness is so we don't keep things blamed on other things other than ourselves. But we have to list the blame altogether so we could see simultaneously so we could discern simultaneously there's a breaching method involved. See, but correlation nature uses lists ways greater than and more finite than and more properly active than computers could or ever would. It also shows us the value of what came first. How are you doing? So this is about the law. And they've been using extortion methods and torture methods and slavery methods that our founders left us to communicate. And the whole country wants to get behind you, New York, people of New York City. See, but the identity is the law. There's a certain type of victim / hyper victim. If we don't blame them, they hurt us one way. If we blame them, they hurt us, they lie either way. See, the wrong people are going to jump in to be speaking for the law if we don't pull them down too from their tactical delusions. The nature of debate between people. So there are many ways. Nature shows us there are many ways. There are criminally foreign influenced ways to pretend to believe that voting means what it doesn't. That voting is more important than mandated law followed properly, with care properly. See, we're not using what's actually simultaneously recorded properly. We're not using the value of what came first. We have a whole bunch of people planting evidences every day. Investigators in their campuses. They never stop being used remotely, criminally foreign influence, at the same time with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. This is what most furthered them in the past and still does. This breaching method never stopped keeping our own self-valued roles, measuring and maintaining. Like the breach of the American history wasn't about T-tax. That truth is used for a lie. No one has addressed the extortion of George Washington or of James Madison, honestly. No one has addressed the torture of them, honestly. No one has addressed the torture and the extortion and the fact-cheating nature slavery of everyone, which that honestly brings up, which means Native Americans too, which means the ground below their feet, which means the water's identity of relationship to the ground as natives guide. We don't have that. The only thing we have hyper-native, or in other words, unabridged constitution. In other words, we don't have an abridged constitution. The Constitution is grounded, abridged, and others pretended. That is screened. The relativity of certain type of child abuse, where and how roles with slavery, maintained fact, truth, nature oriented, where and how our founders charged us to educate each age of fact, truth, nature. And tactical terror has been the quality aspects and nature of that education, formally maintained in place. How they get away with it is also relative. We have to appreciate the word unabridged and the phrase unabridged Constitution. That's more important than what is written in the statute than in the amendments, because that's still being used by the breaching method distinctly from our own language regarding amendments, used effectively to measure and maintain the only increasing value of that breaching method, of the extortion of our founders, of why and of how it was extortion and slavery of everyone's factory nature so bad that it made them even have the means to counter extort people from 13 locations in even more than 13 colonies that themselves were sickly divided, all kinds of sick ways. Suits, the foundation of suits and ties, it was already in place, North and South America, as it was colonies, before our founders were born. They left us to teach that. You guys are quoting books. Oh, this says our founders had slaves. Our founders had to hide the roles countering slavery, let alone the first president, George Washington. Of course, what's put in books is fake. CT must break. Fake! Fake. So, America, Legion, here, tell Judge Napolitano, I'm bringing him into this because I asked him on Facebook, short words. See, you can't go before the courts because they're using those locations to stack fake things. They've already been used remotely, criminally foreign influence. They're already showing needs to hide that at other locations. These are names that have roles with the intelligence community's roles within the locations next to the news locations. They are leaking it by ignoring people. They have mail and wire crime methods. So I can't. So I want to get them on paper first. And I want to make sure that, because they pretended me to fake emails when they were forcing the principal child abuser, and they hid his confessions over the phone, over a landline, and to other people too. And he brought more names into this. It has something to do with people all along Route 3. Involved also through time with whiting forensics and with people on and off the state judicial branch offices. So it's Route 3 conjunctions to that, which is also the state judicial branch offices. These same names and roles tied to them have roles of predicate X my street from all different parts of the cities and states, used at other locations, not off the campuses. Time, collusion, and uses of that consciously are recorded. Timed roles with the news, attaching me and others to fake conversations with themselves, fake locations, fake conversations and locations with strangers and with others. The news has been attaching little kids with foreign and domestic medical families to fake locations and ties, natures of ties to other people. They have words like bully used to keep people, if they describe things, it makes it look like they know people or were in locations with them. They never were, and or that were out of sequence, because they have little tricks with this, where they have the descriptions. They have them communicate. In other words, and the difference between if the investigators are criminally foreign influenced, or the people speaking with them, and the difference between that and how they're all tactically delusions raw too. Because that's also manifest when you guys hear people speaking about black or white, leaving out how we have black people's white survive. They have other things other than themselves, employed by the breaching method to be blamed for nature's demonstrations of itself. A human fact keeping nature breaching method had been entrenched in America since before America was even born. Our fathers were even born. Excuse me, I'm losing my teeth. My front teeth, too. Now, they heard me in this place. They pretended I had conversations with them, too. I didn't have conversations with them. There's a Leahy family. The people who did it had roles in Manhattan with the World Trade Center attack. They're involved with foreign and domestic military with Weathersfield interbranch families who have intercampuses been planting evidences. In other words, and former director of the FBI, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act. He's involved with the same people with the child abusers since before they got caught. Other natures of organized crime at the same time. Use of them on off campuses, not for the reasons they pretend. There's a whole bunch of fake truths used for lies and just totally made up things relative to where and to how there are so many answers that we have been prevented use of because of lies and delusions in their place regarding the histories of our sciences, let alone American history, let alone our country's histories. Our countries have it wrong, see Suits of Time. See Native Dreams. See how the Navajo are being told wisdom, like memory of they do damage control. And they do better than damage control. Trying to preserve our means to discern a breaching method, how we're not allowed to speak things, and how we're supposed to pretend other anyway, or try anyway, is what the Native Americans remember. But everyone's remembering it less and less. But while nature shows more and more demonstrations of it, because nature stays about the simultaneous / hyper simultaneous. It's not about hot or cold. It's not about hot or cold and warm. It's about hot, cold, warm, and check to make sure it's not criminal and seditious nature. Not because of that, because they're checking to see if you're following its course. Its use as method of revealing answers. It is inseparable from the smallest finite detail of anything you can make, reveal, or even make up. I have to eat something. I'm so hungry right now. So follow mandated law for them. You can't just call the police. They fabricate audio and video transcripts, replace what's there, and just totally make it up. It's not them alone. The other police firms are with them. It's how they got away with it all. They play a little trick. Oh, it's not us though, because they mix in with the police forms, other police forms who never had the integrity to speak for the identity law in New York City and Hartford, let alone New York City. Lies. Who thinks they're going to speak for the law? They have the little game where they say, "Oh, come down to the neighborhood and speak. Follow mandated law right now." I swear to God. Get them on paper. These are people from Weathersfield who are involved with the campuses, names next to campuses in Hartford. They're hiding behind badges and gavels too. And with their extended family members, their roles all along roads and routes. As names timed roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. So hide no title or nothing. Just get them on paper. The Connecticut Interbranch. Before the World Trade Center attack, they effected confessions to me at New Britain and West Hartford locations, Hartford courts, and New Britain Superior Courts families. And I found out it's about people with unauthorized state judicial branch offices in the Connecticut District Court. They were involved with predicate acts with facts and various natures of organized crime and child abuses, elderly abuses at the same time. Where and how this breaching method employed each age of correlation nature to be a certain kind of sickly distinct victim and or used where and how the counters to all that causes and the exceptions are collusions too. This breaching method gets over on the simultaneous nature. This breaching method still, so they're still playing games. You can't just call up and get a thing. They'll change what you say and fabricate audio and video. Please, UConn too. You guys have a whole bunch of retired and standing doctors and ones with badges, ones with the military involved with child offenders, identity thefts and fraud, slanders, tactical delusions too, with psychiatry. We're going to rip them right out of we're going to rip the band-aid right off, and then we're going to take the cancer out of our campuses because that's what is international too. There's a Bob Chase with a Whiting forensic with the same house/S involved with wire crimes with them and with drugs and medicines crimes with kids while they're tactically delusions raw, falsified police report at federal evidences crimes, and with the lawyers and judges and their family members at Whiting Forensics with their patients and criminals before they got caught, keeping them to hide that stuff too, and against innocent people to force that before they were caught. They should fear God now. And the witness protection program, how it's involved with uses of corners of buildings by people associated with it as them. Make sure you get on paper with the courts, Bob Chase, and this Phil Collo you brought up. He's further involved with people not too long ago, still involved with violence on my street, and then to have other people speak the threats for themselves, and it makes it sound like I had communications with them. So they tried to pretend they planted evidences on all sides of my high school with a Phil Collo involved, with a Ray. There's a Anthony Yagman who was also involved with his brother with drugs and medicines crimes with judges and prosecutors and doctors when I was a kid, involved with identity thefts and frauds behind my back, slander with his brother and people near me associated with them with this. They have roles with the Department of Motor Vehicles, Department of Transportation. Whole bunch of names tied to the name Collo and Lombardo and Violet, Mark Violet, involved with Hartford Hospital, and names on Church Street in Old Weathersfield, and all along that route. There's a Kolvinskis family and the conjunctions to it, like all along Route 175 and the conjunctions to it. A Kolvinskis family is involved with them too, with retired Weathersfield police chiefs, with the same houses involved with wire crimes with them, with the Weathersfield police, all along that route. People with, and they said it's involved with Charlie Bowes and his family. And then a whole bunch of people at Trinity College recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed their roles with predicate acts with people on my street in Weathersfield who had been intercities planting evidences with them, same names. And they're pretending it's personal when the Weathersfield police brought this up over the phone while they're confessing, switching names and forging names since before that. So make sure they get to a response for the rest of the roles with the principal child abuser involved with it. And with this Phil Collo, they have roles with more poisonous threats and with guns threats. And then with planting evidences with the interbranch judge, a whole bunch of judges, family members involved with the same house. Or ones with the name Smith too. Judge Killian. Ones with the name Spada, Scalora. There's ones with the name Scalora also on off the World Trade Center. A Keene family, a Daniel Keene, his parents and neighbors like Faenza and Fazina have roles with people with the name Dylan on off my street with child offenders, wire crimes with the area, and with the principal child abusers campus further, and on off the state judicial branch, which is right near there. These are people off the World Trade Center with further criminally foreign influence uses of the courts next to it and that place. Their roles with the use of my name. What WFSB has been planting predicate acts with the investigations investigated the World Trade Center, including digital police families, foreign and domestic, involved with it. It has something to do with their roles with corners of streets and buildings. And I can show you how and why they're using them. has something to do with their roles all along. How they're motivated too. They don't even know the extent of it themselves. It's a method of keeping them describing things where they can't afford. The people that are formally receiving evidences, how they are kept criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, and used remotely pretending other. Screening it. Screening what is actually recorded. So no one's going to pretend we have success. No one's going to pretend we're having success, and and they can't fathom that how people could be tortured in New York City or extorted, and both. Let alone they pretend they couldn't fathom how they could be factory or enslaved. You guys are sickly distinct from the best campus to the worst campus, and the difference of that is also effectively employed for pseudoscience, pretended science, tactical pseudoscience. I use that phrase. I heard everyone started using it for 3 years. Exceptionalism, too. American exceptionalism. You guys got to need to learn about difference. You guys are going to need to follow mandated law. Make sure they get on one name in sequence, because New Britain Superior Court has women judges and women roles with the court involved with the excuse me, involved with the men. And even though some of them have family members, kids at the schools, that's what I'm trying to tell you, people. Is not to blame. You guys need, because they blame all the time, while their roles with predicate acts way sicker and nature's way sicker than kids they're putting in jail. And they have roles with medical corruption, all kinds of scams, and they pretend to be there. They're planting evidences online they're all come people with Social Security scams. As the intelligence community using mental health locations and mental health doctors and people involved next with like buildings next to Fox Connecticut News, next to WFSB, putting fake things in databases, tactically delusions raw, not legitimate with drugs. They have their kids not legitimately as police farms and with drugs and stuff. They're catching kids with fake use of drugs. Their families to fake use of drugs, alcohol. In other words, so they have a whole bunch of people involved. They keep stacking names, and they say, "Oh, everyone's evil." You guys keep that. You guys, in other words, follow mandated law. Get one person on paper. Get the judges on paper in sequence. One name in sequence on paper now. And I want a response for why they didn't give me paper the first time and why they attached the confessions to the array of falsified police reports and the mistakes they pretended they were only. They were more than that because they were switching their officers' names. And they brought in a whole bunch of different, has intelligence community with East Hartford locations. It has something to do with the men and women involved with the locations next to the airport place in East Hartford and with this Magnanos. And if that's his real name or not, there's an officer Magnanos. And I believe there's families of his men and women with Central Connecticut State University involved with East Hartford, with New Britain, which is involved within the East Hartford Intelligence Committee with the FBI. A whole bunch of people with the name tomorrow involved with judges and prosecutors planting evidences with their family members. And as the rules of wire crime acts with people on my street, O'Brien family is one of the ones on off Central Connecticut State University with the leaking going on. And through elections, through administrations, criminally foreign influence uses of Wethersfield town offices and of the school board meetings. They're out of mind. Make sure they get on paper too. The school board. There are people with the name Fazina tied to a Mark Violet involved with the intelligence community, including foreign and domestic medical families and military medical, foreign and domestic, who are involved with drugs and medicines crimes with the kids, identity theft, fraud, slander, interstate since they were kids. They are not legitimate intelligence community, and these are not roles legitimate with the military, with their roles with the Yukon locations, like in places along the Saustian Highway and next to Trinity College. Involved also with them. I never had a class in my life with Mark Violet or with his brother, and they have something to do with a Joshua Stryker involved also, and some people with the name Olson. Generations of people with the name Olson involved with identity theft, fraud, slander. I never had a class with them either. And there's a Mr. Olson. There's a Mr. Neville, who was my 8th grade teacher. He put me in a summer school class at a different campus that I never went to except for that summer school class. Charles Wright, it was at. I never saw those people. My neighbor, Heather Hanson, Joel Demore, I never saw them on my middle school campus. I never had a class with Ray Claw in grammar school. He was one of the ones involved with predicate acts at my grammar school with their teachers, fake conversations with people, whether you're not involved with it, you don't even know the people. They're putting fake things in the databases of people from Central Connecticut State University into Britain through time, criminally foreign influence uses of placements with campuses. A whole bunch of people tied to a former coach, Hagenbart, who was also a gym teacher. I never had personal conversations with him. They have personal conversations with him, criminally foreign influence. They've been planting evidences with him. And people are tied to him per themselves. So make sure they get on paper too, because there are more people then and now increasingly involved intercity. And they're changing what everyone says. So this is also Bravo Network has a police chief, Cintron, who's one of the ones involved with child offenders with his family. He has a daughter, Jessica Cintron, that John Maiano brought up in his confessions and his statements where he says things after he said other and sequence shifting. He's involved with people that record fake things consciously while they're pretending other, because they keep things going before courts. They've been stacking fake things in their databases with these punks. So John Maiano and Alex Maiano are involved with natures of identity theft, frauds, and slanders, also with other natures of sick people. And they have family members of theirs that I don't know the names of, foreign and domestic, and locations involved with their family members, and names next to them involved with this. Intercities. Make sure you get a Wethersfield Police on paper. There's a Luigi Guerrero, who's also one of the ones further involved by my Saudi friend with confessions. Luigi Guerrero, I never had a class with him either. His sister was in a class with me at Central Connecticut State University. Already that was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles. They have roles with the World Trade Center attack from Connecticut, as the names in Manhattan were involved with the Ninth Circuit Court and the spots right next to it, leading up to it long term, shortly right before it, and in that context and since. Also with WFSB, fake conversation with me about the World Trade Center attack, fake outcome in legal cases. The Leahy family also did that through time. A Rick C.M. Faglione has a Leahy family recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with some wire crimes with an O'Brien family and with the Colella family, with the Wethersfield Police and Whiting Forensics through time, and a whole bunch of people involved with Witness Protection Program and other criminal enterprises. So make sure they get on paper one name is sequence. They've been coaching the sense and sensibilities as victims, so they're going to hurt their kids or help them and hurt them that way. People want to just repeat things when people want to leave out the thing. They want to have faith in the police, but the police have no integrity. Then they pretend that you said something bad about them, and they change what you said, etc. Make sure with the branch of government individually grouped together, time collusion with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. People that use the name Joey Quest involved with identity thefts, frauds, and slanders, with the judges and prosecutors and police forms involved, and their family members, with my neighbors, criminally foreign influence. Fake! Make sure the people next to the Hartford Hospital too with this ILO and the mayors associated with the kids. They want forgiveness. Tell them to get on paper fast, saying sorry. Make sure they don't pretend they're gonna run for mayor again. Make sure they get on paper. Make sure they know about this. Make sure I get a response for the principal child abusers. A whole bunch of confessions and the fake emails and wire and mail crimes, falsified police reports. They have roles with the spots and names next to where there was a reported one kid shot another kid, which is down not far from where the state judicial branch offices are too. No. So that, in other words, that's also involved since before that with use of location /S relative. Make sure they get on paper. Rob Rodriguez has places he worked at. He's involved with the intelligence community, people that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed uses of him. He demonstrated was true. And I don't know him. He was pretending other, trying to plant evidences on my street. He has roles with some untimely deaths, with locations, with a house that got involved with two different families at two different times that lived there with untimely deaths, connected uses of it that were what connects them too. So make sure a whole bunch of people that have names forging and switching with Orion and his brother Terry and their mother, involved also with this Dillon family and everyone around me planting evidences on my campuses behind my back. And at the elderly home, they have roles with the elderly homes with the child abusers, and the names involved with the Wethersfield police. Whole bunch of stuff. So pick one thing, because these are people involved with body dumping spots. And I had stuff verified on Facebook before they blocked my Facebook pages, lying about their motivations for that. People tied to the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso and the state judicial branch offices with the Fienza family and the Vizina family and the Steven Stocko involved with names on off the state corrections office. I know out of the state corrections office, out of the state judicial branch office, and out of the Central Connecticut State University and the Board of Education building, and with mayors retired and standing. Foreign and domestic people involved sickly with the kids on off Two Rod Highway /Hangdog Lane and the conjunctions to it and to that, like the Burlington Park before the heart of Hartford, and the three spots at and end of it, and like the Route 3, which is certain ways conjunctive to the state judicial branch office. Fear. I teach you law, but here. So in other words, they block people from being heard by they type things in my comments. Someone typed a Ray Clow, even if that wasn't him. The Clows are involved with judges and prosecutors planting evidences with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and child abusers, and organized crime by names that are associated with body image spots, if they know or not. Also, the roommate of a Ray Clow was involved with a whole bunch of people with them, with the buildings next to the news media, and they have a whole bunch of families that run the car dealerships that have roles with planting in identity theft, fraud, slinders, little tricks, how they keep each location, area, and state criminally foreign influence pretending other. Whole bunch of people tied to that area. That in other words, like there's neighbors of Naz, Lenny Triglia too, involved with foreign and domestic medical corruption, and mayors involved with child abusers, and his mayors and their roles with that. I don't know. I never had anything to do with him. He planted evidences with the full new exception. I know him. And then, in other words, they've been hiding stuff from before that and after that, tied with people tied to him. You know, with fake exception know me. There's a Joshua Julian also on Facebook page of the principal child abuser with people who were recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed him involved with them also with KKK themed, Confederate flag themed, and black themed home break-ins and roles with Wethersfield police with those people, those families involved with it. and with the FBI involved with it, other agencies and their family members. A whole bunch of people tied to Eric Jensen involved in interstates with state police forms, foreign and domestic military, criminally foreign influence, sticking predicate acts and databases tied to that, their roles with their family members, with the state police families, etc. Make sure they get on paper. A whole bunch of people tied to Mike Roberts, also with that, with the shopping centers involved, planting evidence as tricks, and Mendez police involved with such, and with the name with has something to do with the roles intercities, with the spots associated with Ray Colo and this Daryl Chandler, and there are people in his family. I don't know Daryl Chandler. He tried to pretend other. He's involved with sequence shifts when I was a kid. Corners to try to make a fake except I knew. And in other words, has something to do with the people involved with this. Break it out untimely deaths, even if they made some of them up or all of them. There was one of them on Trinity College who was involved with the names of this, the confessions of a Rob Rodriguez, of his wife died of untimely death, with the people involved with the drugs with the untimely death at Trinity College, per them. And then he brought it up and confirmed it. And he did so by timing where I was going to be by using a field across the street from my house, pretending he was just walking that way. There are connections between people who did that in my life. And there were time uses of them intercities. So I learned a lot of things about what the intelligence community does, where how they never had they have never had the integrity to speak for intelligence. So they valued abridged math classes, so they could get away with being fake punks with reason and pretending other. A whole bunch. If they want to be described how it's proper, the victim / hyper victim, don't make us leave out the breaching method, because that's what has to be listed, so we can discern it. Overt criminal enterprises, private ones, in the branches of government, where the difference between their criminality was also applied by the breaching method and it still is when they ask what our Jim Crow law is about. Was the Civil War, the truths about the Civil War being about against slavery, they're using that for lies. Both sides. Both sides. Ow! Okay, thank you.